Let's be blunt. Fortnite is in trouble. Big trouble. Yesterday, Epic Games dropped a bomb on the video game industry, announcing they are laying off over 1,000 employees. And the reason they gave is a shocker and admission few thought they'd ever hear. There's been a major sustained downturn in Fortnite engagement that started back in 2025. Player numbers have cratered, playtime is down, and the company is now making drastic cuts just to stay afloat. Now, this isn't just another headline about industry layoffs, though it is definitely part of that deeply troubling trend, okay? This feels different. This is about the king, the titan, the game that literally defined the generation and rewrote the financial playbook for every publisher on the planet. This could be a sign that the undisputed champion of live service games is finally truly starting to fall, and it might just take the whole model down with it. For years, Fortnite seemed invincible. It survived new console generations, massive market shifts, and a revolving door of competitors who tried and failed to capture its lightning in a bottle. But the memo sent out by CEO Tim Sweeney today paints a picture of a company facing its most extreme market conditions since its earliest days. This isn't just bad news for Epic Games, it's a terrifying warning sign for the entire video game industry. The news hit an already bruised and battered industry like a ton of bricks. Over 1,000 Epic employees are being laid off, which is a staggering number, representing roughly 20% of the company's entire workforce. In a memo sent to all staff, a memo the company later made public, CEO Tim Sweeney didn't mince words. He opened with a line nobody ever wants to hear from their boss. "I'm sorry we're here again." He then made a direct and stunningly blunt connection that confirms what many have suspected for months. The downturn in Fortnite engagement that started in 2025 means we're spending significantly more than we're making, and we have to make major cuts to keep the company funded. Let that sink in for a second. Epic Games, the company that was printing money for years, the empire built on V-Bucks and battle passes, is now spending more than what it earns. This isn't a small course correction, it's pulling the emergency brake. The layoffs are just one part of a massive cost-saving plan. Sweeney's note revealed the company is also slashing over $500 million in other areas, like contracting, marketing, and closing job openings, all to get the money back to a more stable place. When a company the size of Epic has to find $500 million in saving on top of firing a fifth of its staff, you know things are dire. And this wasn't a sudden problem. That phrase, "I'm sorry we're here again," carries a lot of weight, because this is the third major round of layoffs for the company recently. They cut 830 jobs, or about 16% of their staff, back in September of 2023. More cuts followed in 2024. At the time of the 2023 layoffs, Sweeney admitted the company was spending more than it earned but hoped they could power through without more. That hope is now gone. The problem wasn't a temporary blip. It was the start of a downward spiral that has now forced their hand. Sweeney's memo is fascinating because it's both a confession and a defense. He's admitting the company's golden goose is in trouble, but he's also trying to frame it in a bigger picture. He points to industry-wide challenges, slower growth, people spending less, and the fact that the current generation of consoles is selling worse than the last one did. He even points out that games are now fighting for our time against each other. Super engaging forms of entertainment, a clear shot at the dominance of platforms like TikTok. But hiding in that bigger explanation is the core company-specific crisis that led to this moment. So let's get into the why. Why is the game that raked in over $9 billion in its first 2 years now the reason its parent company is in a financial crisis? The answer is in the data, and the data paints a pretty grim picture. The downturn Tim Sweeney mentioned wasn't a small dip, it was a landslide. According to reports that track player data, Fortnite's engagement has been falling off a cliff. From a high point in late 2024, the average daily player count reportedly plummeted through 2025, at one point losing the equivalent of an entire major city's population in daily players. By the summer of 2025, the 30-day average number of players had fallen to its lowest point since early 2023. And it's not just about how many people log in, it's about how long they stick around. Overall playtime in Fortnite reportedly saw a dramatic double-digit drop during 2025. Even the players who stayed were playing a lot less. For a live service game, playtime is the most critical metric. It's the lifeblood. It keeps people invested in the world, and more importantly for Epic, keeps them buying V-Bucks. A drop that significant is a catastrophic failure of engagement. Question is, what went wrong? How did Epic lose what Sweeney himself called the Fortnite magic? The most obvious answer is the content. For years, the magic of Fortnite was its relentless, surprising innovation. The map was practically a main character. One season a meteor would hit it, the next a giant cube would roll across it, changing everything. The live events were unmissable cultural spectacles, but that consistency has been shaky. Recent seasons feel inconsistent. People are getting tired of all the collaborations, while dropping into a match as a Star Wars character or Naruto in itself is cool the first few times. The endless parade of branded skins had started to feel less like a fun event and more like a desperate marketing ploy. The game started to feel predictable. But the bigger issue might be a massive strategic blunder. The metaverse mistake. Epic, flush with cash and ambition, decided Fortnite shouldn't just be a game. It should be a platform. They launched a ton of new experiences, rocket racing, a music-focused festival mode, and other projects. They were trying to build their own Roblox, a digital world where you would live, not just play. But in doing so, they took their eye off the ball. They diluted what made Fortnite great. Resources got spread thin, and the quality and innovation of the main Battle Royale mode, the reason everyone showed up in the first place, started to suffer. Now, as part of this restructuring, many of those side projects are being scaled back or shut down. A quiet admission that the grand metaverse vision hasn't worked out. And we can't forget the long, brutal war Epic waged against Apple and Google. Their fight over App Store fees was a principled stand for developer rights, but it came at a huge cost. Being kicked off the iOS App Store was a devastating blow. It cut them off from a massive casual player base for years. As Sweeney admitted in the memo, Epic is only in the early stages of returning to mobile, a process that's been slow, expensive, and so far hasn't recaptured the momentum they lost. As Tim Sweeney was quick to point out, this isn't just an Epic Games problem. The layoffs on Fortnite's decline are happening inside a much broader industry crisis. We're in the middle of what you could call the Great Correction. The gaming industry went on an insane hiring spree during the pandemic. Growth seemed infinite. Everyone was stuck at home and everyone was playing video games. So publishers and studios staffed up, thinking that was the new normal. It wasn't. Now, we're seeing the painful reversal. According to some counts, the industry has lost tens of thousands of jobs since 2022. Epic's 1,000-person layoff is just the latest and maybe most shocking chapter in a story of an industry shrinking at a terrifying speed. This correction is hitting live service games especially hard because the model itself is being stress tested to its breaking point. We've hit total market saturation. Fortnite's success created a gold rush. Every major publisher decided they needed their own billion-dollar live service game. But they forgot about the attention economy. There are only so many hours in a day. For a new live service game to succeed, it doesn't just have to be good. It has to be good enough to convince a player to abandon a game they've already sunk hundreds of hours and maybe hundreds of dollars into. For years, that was nearly impossible. Now, we're seeing that even the kings themselves are struggling to hold on to their own players. The fatigue is genre-wide. This isn't just a Fortnite problem, it's a Battle Royale problem. While Fortnite's playtime dropped significantly in 2025, some reports suggest its main competitors fared just as poorly, if not worse. The entire genre that dominated gaming for the better part of a decade seems to be in decline. Players are getting tired of the same old formula. Sure, there are outliers, but the gold rush for Battle Royale is officially over. And the competition isn't just other games. It's social media, streaming services, and most of all, the endless algorithm-perfected scroll of short-form video. A 10-minute Battle Royale match is a huge time commitment compared to the instant hit of a 30-second TikTok. The battle for our attention has never been more fierce, and for the first time in a while, video games are showing signs of losing ground. So, where does Epic and the industry go from here? What happens when the king starts to stumble? Well, first, the future of Fortnite itself. Despite the downturn, we have to remember Fortnite is still a massive game with over 1 million people playing on an average day and a registered user base of over 650 million. It's not going to vanish overnight, okay? But its role might be changing. The pessimistic view is that the game is now in managed decline. Epic will probably keep pumping out big collaborations to milk its dedicated fans for as long as they can. Events will still bring in huge spikes of players, but the day-to-day baseline will likely keep shrinking. The company's true focus will inevitably shift to its real long-term cash cow, the Unreal Engine. That, not Fortnite, is Epic's future. Is there an optimistic view? Maybe. A crisis can force a company to refocus. It's possible this is the wake-up call Epic needed to ditch its distracting metaverse ambitions and get back to basics. A hypothetical Fortnite 2.0 that focuses on what made the game great, the core battle royale. Truly inventive map changes and mind-blowing live events could maybe, just maybe, reignite that spark. But that would take a huge shift in strategy and admitting their recent direction was a mistake. The bigger question is what this means for the live service mode itself. For years, people have warned that the model was unsustainable. For every one successful Fortnite, there are dozens of failures. Games with huge budgets that were dead on arrival. But you could always write those off as just bad games. Fortnite's crisis is different. It's a blow to the model itself. If the undisputed best-in-class example of a live service game can fall into this much financial trouble, what hope does any other game have? It proves the live service model is not a guaranteed money printer. It's a high-risk, high-reward gamble where the market can only support a few winners, and even those winners aren't safe forever. Finally, there's a ripple effect, especially for console makers like Sony. A huge chunk of PlayStation's network revenue comes from their 30% cut of microtransactions from games like Fortnite. If Fortnite's revenue is in a sustained slide, Sony's is too. This, combined with consoles underperforming compared to previous generations, creates a tricky situation. It may force Sony and Microsoft to be way more careful about which live service games they back. The era of blinding chasing the live service dream might be coming to a very painful end. And of course, a game is now so expensive to make that even though they're huge hits, they might come off at a loss. The 1,000+ layoffs at Epic Games are more than just another tragic headline. They are a direct result of the decline of Fortnite, a game that once seemed too big to fail. This decline is a symptom of a much larger disease spreading through the industry, a saturated market, a tired player base, and a business model that has been pushed to its absolute limit. Epic's crisis is a warning shot for the entire industry. The strategies that defined the last decade of gaming aren't working anymore. The assumptions that drove billion-dollar investments are turning out to be false. We are at an inflection point, a painful correction that is reshaping the very foundations of how games are made and sold. But that leads me to the ultimate question. Is this the end of the live service era? Or is it just a brutal but necessary market correction that will clear the way for a new kind of innovation? Let me know what you think down in the comments. What does this mean for the future of Fortnite and the game industry as a whole? What does this mean to you as a gamer? And if you found this analysis insightful in the least, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the business of gaming. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.